On this episode of Second Swing Thoughts, we have the Ryder Cup to look back at. Certainly an interesting event with all kinds of things to break down from Bethpage Black. We also have Tyler Fitzel joining to talk about fall club fittings. What's the big advantage to maybe getting fit, getting your equipment looked at this time of year, and then also breaking down some stuff to come as well. So that is what will be covered in this episode of Second Swing Thoughts. Hey golfers, I'm Drew Mahold of Second Swing Golf here for another episode of Second Swing Thoughts. Sean Bauer, co-host over yonder. And today we've got the Ryder Cup we got to go over to start here, Sean. And then we have Tyler Fitzel joining to break down club fittings and specifically why it's advantageous to do so this time of year. But we'll start with the Ryder Cup, and I'm sure what an event that turned out to be.
Yeah, awesome event. And as for, Tyler's conversation, we had a question last week when we did kind of a viewers submitted questions for Jake Montgomery, and someone had asked, is there a best time of the year to get fit? And Jake said that, the fall is at one of the best times just because of your swing being in its, if you've played the most golf, your swing is as good as it's going to be. And then all the added, expertise that our fitters have gained fitting people into these clubs all year. So that kind of spurred this conversation that we had with Tyler. So we'll get to that. So make sure you want to stay tuned for that. But yeah, as for the Ryder Cup, obviously Europe was the winners.
Yeah.
Nothing breaking news there. They become the first team since they did it in 2012 to win in away Ryder Cup. Drew, you accurately predicted a Europe win, so kudos to you. We almost had a historical comeback. It was, for about an hour there. Things all of a sudden, putts that weren't dropping for the Americans were dropping, and the Europeans who hadn't missed all week were missing, and they had a chance with 4 matches to go to do it. Unfortunately, a couple, Russell Henley left 2 putts short on 17-18 to have the match, which retained the cup, and then Colin Morikawa ended up having his match, which ultimately proved to be the winning point, not so much a retain, which I know for, some people, maybe it doesn't matter whether you retain or win it, but I think for the players and the teams, they don't ever want to be like, well, we retained the cup,
Right.
So, so congratulations to Team Europe. They are a machine. Their best players played like their best players.
Yeah, it was, the first 2 days were absolutely dominant from Team Europe. And it goes back to some of the things I had mentioned last week. It just seems like as a team, as a cohesive unit, there's a bond there that maybe not, the United States team doesn't quite have. And again, I think that just comes back to having, 11 of the 12 guys returning from 2023. And then, I know you made the joke last week that genetically it was the same team. If you swap out the twin brothers of the Højgaards there, actually, genetically the same team. But there's a lot of the same bond there, continuity from year over year that clearly seems to benefit Team Europe there. So, and then we could talk about a bunch of other things from this event and course setup and how the tournament kind of became almost a putting contest in a way that obviously favored Europe. So nonetheless, though, it was entertaining on Sunday when the U.S. really kind of roared back there.
Yeah, and really, the foursome sessions were the parts that were very lopsided. That first session, Europe in alternate shot was 5 under, 7 under, and 5 under through 10, 11, 12 holes, however many it took for them to win those matches. In 3 of the 4 matches that they won. That's incredible golf in alternate shot. But 2, it just showed you how much, especially in foursomes, having that continuity with your partner. The U.S. put out a lot of teams that, Bryson and JT had never played foursomes together. That was a strange pairing. Obviously, you had Cantlay and Schauffele, who are kind of like the stalwarts for the U.S. in that specific format. And, they got that 1 point for them there, which is big. But, Europe, they brought over pretty much the same team. They had the same captain, the same approach. They were motivated. It was a perfect storm. And then, unfortunately, the golf course was just the setup for Bethpage Black, which, has hosted U.S. Opens, PGA Championships. Always known for how difficult it is. It has the warning sign, right? And it played way too easy. And I think, the U.S. has set that up in previous Ryder Cups. You go back to Hazeltine, and they had mowed down some of the rough a little bit because at that time the U.S. had a significant advantage off the tee in terms of distance. So by making the rough less penalizing, it favored distance. Well, Europe's caught the U.S. in driving distance, and we'll get into some of the top performers of the Cup and the clubs, and I'll point out some stats that shows you that the U.S., I mean, it really was a putting contest because the U.S. was better in every other measurable category.
Yeah, that's where it's a little unfortunate that basically the U.S. Everywhere up until the green was maybe the better team throughout the week, but ultimately at the end of the day, right, when you're out playing golf with your friends, it's the same thing. You got to make putts for any of those previous shots on that hole to matter. If you hit a drive down the fairway and you hit an approach shot to 6 feet, it doesn't really matter if you missed that putt. So that's what it came down to at the Ryder Cup.
Yeah, and I think as far as the most valuable players, I mean, it's hard to not pick Tommy Fleetwood.
Yeah, he was phenomenal.
4-1. He took down, obviously him and Rory were spectacular together in foursomes, and then in four balls, he paired up with Justin Rose, and especially Friday kind of carried Rose. Saturday was more of complimentary, but then down the stretch, he made every shot he possibly could as those two beat, Bryson and Scotty, who played pretty well. But I think Rose and Fleetwood in four ball were like 12 or 11 or 12 under through 15, 16 holes,
yeah,
which is...
And something like, I think Rose by himself was going to be like on 59 watch if there was,
so,
so it's, the golf they were playing was unreal, the conditions notwithstanding, like it was fantastic to watch. I mean, they were flag hunting, they were dropping putts. They deserve to win.
Yeah,
like
I think it's pretty easy to pick him as the Europe MVP. US, I think, is pretty clear cut too. Cam Young, he was spectacular. Honestly, if he had 3 putts in his Saturday 4-ball matchup against Rory there. He missed 3 putts on the first 3 holes that would have won holes, and they lost but 1 up. Mm-hmm. Him and JT did. He makes those. All of a sudden, the U.S. gets a full point there. Changes things.
Yeah, it does change things.
But he was really great. I mean, obviously, Rory was outstanding. All the stuff that he had to deal with to perform like that is pretty impressive. And then John Rahm, I mean, that guy he seemed to just be a magician. He would pull pars and birdies out of nothing. That chip in on that downhill par 3 on that lie is still probably the best shot I saw all weekend.
Yeah, they were a juggernaut. I mean, they didn't let up. The Europeans did not let up. If you had to take advantage of every opportunity you got as Team USA. So kudos to them. They're the better team. They deserve to win. I know we're going to highlight some clubs here a little bit, but it was a fun watch. Yeah. I will say that.
And then we had what made it stand out a little more too is we had the envelope rule come into play, which hadn't happened I think since the early 90s. Was it Jerry Pate maybe?
Yep.
Could be getting the name wrong there, but he had to withdraw, and how it goes is each team puts a member in an envelope. If someone has to withdraw due to injury on either team, then that player sits out the final single session, and they each earn a half a point. So I'm just kind of curious on your thoughts on the rule.
Yeah, I mean, I think Keegan had said that he wants the rule changed. I'm not sure how it's even in place. Is it something captains back in the day agreed upon? It's just kind of been handed down.
I think it's 1979 when they kind of when Europe all came together. It was a rule they put in place.
I saw the idea floated around that each team should carry a 13th player for the sake of injuries, and they go in almost acting as a vice captain, and then if there is an injury, they end up getting getting the clubs ready to go, and they go play right in place of that person on Sunday. I don't know if that's exactly the right answer, but it does seem a little odd that they can just, especially the team that needed 2.5 points on Sunday, can just be like, there's our half point. Victor's going to withdraw.
Yeah, and I think if it was a close matchup, I don't think anyone even cares. Like, all right, I think the U.S., if it was a close matchup and it was, we get to get a half point with Victor Hovland, we'll take that.
Yeah.
But obviously because they were so close, every half point mattered to the U.S. It kind of magnified it. My thought is just, if a team has to withdraw, that guy gets 0 points, and then the other team just gets a half point. So it's not like they're not winning the match, but it stinks that you had to withdraw. But at the same time, in every other sport, injuries happen.
So the only issue I have with that potentially is that it could become a scenario where it's 14 to 13.5, and the team that gets 13.5 doesn't get the 14 they need to retain, and the team that has 14 doesn't get the 14.5 to win it.
You know what you have to do to win and retain?
Yeah, so,
Like,
I mean, it'd be
you
very
know,
funny if that happened.
I just think, like, you're injured. That stinks. Like, I hope Victor's all right, but at the same time, it's like he shouldn't get a half point just
for not playing.
For not playing.
For choosing not to play.
And obviously, he could have very well beaten Harris English. It wouldn't have mattered. But if Harris English wins, that's a big half point for that, team. So I just think that would be my solution. It's kind of combine the current rule to make it not too unfair. But it was just interesting that came into play. And because of what the U.S. did, it really mattered there for a little bit. Had they not made the
when I first saw it the night before, or maybe the morning of, when it was like announced, I was like, I think all of us were kind of like, well, it's not going to matter, so who cares? And of course, 5 hours later, we're like, oh my goodness.
Because then, it just the fact that they came back is the only reason why it seemed to matter. So,
right.
But yeah, that's enough about kind of the Ryder Cup itself. Let's kind of look at some of the top performers per category and the top clubs they used. Looking at the drivers, strokes gained off the tee. Bryson DeChambeau and Cam Young led the field. Bryson, of course, playing his Crank Formula Fire Pro driver there. Cameron Young going with the Titleist GT2. We had kind of talked with Blaine Seitz last week about why you saw some people that played a 3 model in the Titleist series move into GT2. So he does great explanation into that. So go check out our live at lunch from last week.
Yeah,
but
that was a great conversation. I'll just add, DeChambeau, Young, not a surprise in the slightest.
No.
Of those two are the best drivers at Bethpage. I mean, guys that bomb it, guys that also hit the ball really straight for as much club speed as they generate. So no surprises there. And obviously, we know Bryson and how very particular he is about club fitting, and I'm sure he's done extensive testing on what his setup is a driver, and it's very unique. Yeah. The GT2, obviously, maybe a surprise as a higher MOI driver, so to speak, for Cam Young, but nonetheless, clearly it works for him. Again, one of the better drivers of the golf ball on the planet. Yeah,
absolutely. And interesting in the U.S., they had 4 of the top 6 players in strokes gained off the tee. So you're kind of going to notice a trend here as we work our way closer to the green. What happens?
I'm seeing the notes here. We'll let the people know. But
then moving to kind of the approach. We talked about this guy earlier as the MVP. Tommy Fleetwood led the Ryder Cup in strokes gained on the approach. His iron play was incredible. Seemed like every time he needed to hit a shot, he absolutely hit it. He's playing the TaylorMade P7 TWs. So
yeah, another one we're potentially going to highlight on Live at Lunch this week. The P7 TWs. Now, Scotty Scheffler also plays those irons, so that's part of it as well. But Tommy was hunting flags all week, and he's never been in better form than he is right now.
Yeah, and he's just outstanding. I really like Tommy Fleetwood. The way he handled himself after losing so many close ones, and then to finally win it was awesome. And obviously he's playing for Europe, so I'm rooting against him. But he's
give him a hat tip
and be like, good job. Yeah. But and then on stat on strokes gained approach, USA, 6 of the top 8 players in strokes gained approach were on the U.S. So once again, they're winning off the tee, they're winning on approach. Tommy Fleetwood also led strokes gained tee to green. USA had 8 of the top 12. So tee to green, the U.S. throughout their team was playing better. Obviously, with alternate shot, it can kind of change things. Right. You're only getting, 4 guys, but pretty consistently. Then we move into around the green, and that's where John Rahm, if you saw that chip in he had, and you saw some of the other wedge shots that guy played around the green, just incredible. He's going with a combination here. Gap and sand wedge, Callaway Jaws Raw, and then going with the Callaway Opus Prototype for his lob wedge.
How nice must it have been for Tyrrell Hatton to step up to every approach shot he's got and just know, well, if I pull this one or I push this one 30 yards right, well, John will just get it up and down for me.
Yeah, pretty much. And here's another one. USA around the green, top 5 of the top 6 in strokes gained around the green. So they're better off the tee, they're better on the approach, tee to green, around the green. And then here's where things change. Putting, can you guess who was? I think I mentioned it to you earlier today. But
well, I know the stat that I had seen was after Saturday, and Justin Rose was like miles ahead of everybody else. Had gained like almost 5 strokes on just the 2 days, and he only played 2 sessions at that point, so he was just making everything.
He finished second in total strokes gained putting.
If it's Europe. Trying to think of there's a bunch of Rahm is a good putter.
Sepp Straka. And of course we highlighted
he didn't play all the sessions either.
No, he just played 2. He was 4 balls with Rahm both times. Yeah, so he plays the Odyssey Tuttle Stroke Lab, which we
Yeah.
kind of highlighted, one of the older
is.
clubs, unique clubs in play at the Ryder Cup.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, Europe putting it the way they did clearly, and you even see too, like at PJ Tour events, we get the strokes gained stuff, and we always review it for Sunday Swing and stuff. But like, rarely do you have a PJ Tour winner, and during a week that didn't finish top 10 or top 20 in putting. Scotty's had a couple instances where he'll finish like 50th and just hit it so good that he wins, but a hot putting week typically is required to win on tour, and so it's not that surprising in that regard to see these stats the way they are, where, well, you can kind of get away with not hitting it as good if you just make all your putts.
Yeah. And here's where the stat turns out. Europe had the top 4 players by strokes gained putting, 7 of the top 10.
Yeah. Checks out. I mean, if you watched it,
it was a putting contest, and Europe destroyed them.
Yep. Yeah, that's what it was, and that's even it was way more lopsided than that after Friday Saturday.
Yeah, Sunday definitely like changed the stats big time. If you look at the first 2 days, it's way worse. I think it was like 9 of the top 10 were all from Europe. I think Cam Young was the only one in the U.S. that was up on any of those leaderboards, and I'm sure that also with all the other categories it changed too. Because Russell Henley's performance went way up after kind of struggling his first 2 rounds, but he played incredible on Sunday. Just happened to the 2 best players, strokes gained wise, played against each other, and he just missed 2 putts that should have won the match. But so great time. Enjoy the Ryder Cup. Hopefully, it's a little closer going into Sunday in 2 years at Adair Manor. Of course, in 4 years, it'll be right here in our neck of the woods at Hazeltine.
Yep.
So really looking forward to that. Really enjoyed kind of breaking down the club trends, the unique clubs, everything.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to dive into that stuff this week. Some really fun stuff that we found out about. I'm curious, like especially we talked about 21 players using a mallet. I'm wondering in 2 years and in 4 years when it's back here if that goes up or down.
Told you everyone's gonna be using a zero torque putter.
Yeah, and maybe that's maybe it's like the number of low torque putters in play. So, now we'll get to the main event, so to speak. Tyler Fitzel jumped on. We talked about club fittings, why it's beneficial, and this back half of the year here of 2025 that you can get fit. You might always think, well, early in the year the new products are out, but there's a ton of advantages actually to getting fit now. So we talked through that with Tyler here. We now welcome on the Second Swing Thoughts podcast. It is none other than the Wedge Magician, Tyler Fitzel. I know you appreciate the intro as the Wedge Magician, the title. But today we're talking about some club fittings, of course. That's what we typically talk about. But more specifically, club fittings at this time of year. So this is now we're kind of breaking into the fall season or the last few months of the year.
Right.
And it's an important one because I think a lot of golfers around the United States are almost done with their golf season as it pertains to playing.
Yep.
But there's still reasons to get fit. And so that's the main question I wanted to ask you, Tyler, is what is the advantage for a player to get fit this time of year? Maybe they even already were fit earlier in the spring.
Exactly.
Or maybe that was last spring they were fit, whatever it might be. But why is it important now to go get looked at, your clubs looked at?
The biggest thing that I talk about all the time in fittings is patterns, right? I want to see, okay, what have I noticed? Give me some details as to what part of the bag might have fallen off for us, or we talk about all the time is like this complete system, right? We've got the clubs that we have, we've got the game that we've got. I talk about it all the time in fittings: club, swing, ball. And we want to evaluate those pieces. This doesn't mean that we're sitting here looking for what might be the brand new club. What it is now we know more about the clubs that we've had on the market. And I look at this as a great opportunity to start to say, okay, where was my driver this year? Where was my putter this year? Where was my irons? If I'm looking at the categories of clubs that I've got in my bag, are there things that start sticking out? Was one of them giving me trouble? Hey, did I get fitted and this worked so much better, but I've been fitted one time? Well, then maybe it's time that we get fitted for the other parts of the bag as well.
Yeah, and I think like that's kind of the easy way to answer this is like you can identify after, say, 5-6 months of playing golf pretty consistently. A lot of the players that you work with obviously are playing a lot of golf, whether they're really skilled players or maybe they like to play in leagues or events on the weekends. You play a lot of golf, you identify what you might be struggling with in your game or what might be the quote-unquote weakness of your game. maybe it is with a new club, maybe it's something that's been in the bag for a long time, but nonetheless, you can look at that. And then the other element that I even wanted to, that's happened to me myself, is that your swing can subtly change over the course of a season. There's a tendency, maybe you're slightly in to out with your path, and suddenly that becomes a little more neutral, or maybe even out to in, and you didn't even really notice it happening. And then you look at your swing numbers on TrackMan, and suddenly it's very different than it was 6-7 months ago. And that requires maybe some adjustments to your clubs. Maybe it's a lie angle thing, or there's things that can be adjusted to fit that a little bit better. And so I imagine, again, for a player, we're not saying you have to go into the fitting bay 3 or 4 times a year, but it's just nice to go in and verify that what you have in the bag is still good and the same as it was 7 months ago.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if you kind of look at the big pieces, you talk about woods, which includes like driver, fairway, possibly hybrid. We talk about irons, we talk about wedges, we talk about putter. And if you have an opportunity to look at your stats and you start breaking things down, say, for instance, I haven't been making many putts. Or I should say, it's like I've got more putts during a round than I did, say, last year.
Yeah.
I'll give you my game example. It's like last year I averaged about 28 putts. This year I'm averaging 30. Why? Well, I can start looking back at certain pieces. The driver has found the fairway a lot, so I'm not concerned about it. But the iron game hasn't been as sharp. Well, why is that? I'm on year number 3 with my irons.
Yep.
Is it something about my irons? Do I need to look at them? And is it the loft on them? Is it the lie angle? Is it the shaft on them? It's like, is there something that might work better for me?
And what has changed in your swing potentially to maybe raise this sort of issue?
Correct.
Where irons might not be hitting as close to the hole as it maybe used to be a few years ago.
Yeah, and the same is true as if I don't, like, for instance, if you've gone 3, 4, 5 years with a set of wedges, and all of a sudden you're not as crisp with those wedges. They're not stopping as quickly. They're floating up and they're not going as far. Those are all telltale signs that as fitters we look at.
Yep.
Like, all right, tell me what's going on. Well, the wedges aren't going as far. I think I might be getting older and I'm not hitting them. No, it doesn't have to do with age. It just might have to do with the grooves.
Yeah.
And so the wedges are the things that probably need to be replaced the most. They're also the one club in the bag. You can replace one wedge that you might use the most and have a gigantic impact in your game. And so and we're not asking you to come in and buy 5 new wedges. It's like maybe we just look at one and that one. And now we're at the end of the year. We know what our patterns are. We've seen some of the things that have been going on. And on top of it, we have a lot of inventory. And this is the huge piece for us. You're looking at inventory that's going to get pushed through as new stuff starts to hit the market. Not every company discounts every club as they're selling them, but as a new line comes out, the brand new clubs will be less cost.
Right.
It might not be $50 per club. Maybe it's 10, maybe it's 20, but it's still a high quality product. And that can go for anything in the bag.
Yeah.
So those are also things to look at when we know new products are coming out that are going to cost more. I don't believe that there's a large difference from one product year to another that's going to make all of a sudden a huge difference. I think the fitting is going to matter to get you into the right club that performs better.
And that's one way to look at it as well, as we kind of, put a bow on the, why it's important to get fit in the fall, or at least maybe why it's beneficial is, maybe it's something where in the fall you can diagnose what area of your bag might be weakest. And if it's a driver, for example, we know there's going to be every year, January, February, there's new drivers hitting the market. So then you can kind of set the tone for, okay, next year I need to get a new driver. I need to get fit for something at the top of my bag that I can rely on off the tee. And you know that going in, and it's going to make things way easier for both yourself and also the fitter, and you're going to get dialed in that much better.
Well, we also have a large majority of our customers that may be playing in other areas of the country.
Sure, yeah.
So even looking at it now is saying, all right, I might want to put something into my bag. Getting that opportunity to play some more golf through the winter, if you're someone that goes south, or you do it for, I don't care if you do it for a trip or 2, or if you go down for months, is getting yourself a club that you're going to have some time going into next season.
Yep.
Because we have so many great options. It's like, all right, let's get this in the bag. Let's see what happens through the course of the winter or some of the winter months or a little bit of the play that you have that way.
Yeah.
And then
for
let's
sure.
then let's reevaluate that too. Is if you are someone that travels or you do come back and say, all right, this club's working really well, so now we start looking at other pieces of the bag.
For sure. Yeah. So today we have Tyler Fitzel on. We're talking about why a fall fitting can be beneficial. We just talked about how it can be beneficial for the player, but also there's another element and another angle of this where the fitters actually, it's beneficial for you guys to have these fall fittings because that's a whole year basically to look at some of the trends that you've seen in the bays with a wide variety of golfers. Maybe the products that have performed well, maybe the different things that you've tried this year that maybe you didn't in the past that are working. So can you kind of like, from your perspective, what are some of the things that you now would know going into a fitting, say in October of 2025 versus February of 2025,
right,
that can maybe give you an advantage in a fitting?
1,000%. When you come to me in February and I've just got the brand new drivers from every single company and we get to hit them, people will say, well, which one's good?
Yeah.
At this point, we don't have patterns. We don't have any data on it. Mm-hmm. Now, at this time of the year, I can tell you exactly which one works very well for certain types of swings. So we're talking about someone that might need this. Let's try this. We're talking about someone that really needs something like this. We're talking about this. And that's one of the huge advantages too, is like we can start to put those puzzle pieces together a lot easier now with many of the Fitter's Choice type clubs that we've got, and gives us an opportunity to like also evaluate. If you came in the spring and you were looking at a specific driver, you come in now and say, all right, let's kind of see where this driver's at. You might not have found the difference in the spring, but we might find that difference now. Mm-hmm. And that difference, whether it's an adjustment, like you said, whether it's a different head. The one thing we know about technology is that no matter what, we've got materials and application. So when you start talking about clubs and you go back 5 years, 10 years, 15 or 20, there's better clubs today, but it falls under the category of material and application. Take, for instance, a blade, an iron. It's a blade. Mm-hmm. Like every company kind of has a blade, but they've got different materials. They're doing that. They're putting weight in different areas. They're trying to sculpt it and mold it and get it to do something for the types of players that are looking for that. It's not that it's a major adjustment in terms of the shape. It's more of a major adjustment in terms of the materials that they're using and where they put them.
Well, and that comes from trial and error. That's from years of, seeing it applied by golfers, how golfers like it, how they don't like it, and making the adjustments necessary. And it's similar to what you do in the fitting bay all year. It's like, in February, it's a lot more of, okay, well, let's just see what all these drivers are going to do. Yep. Let's put them all in the test here or in this fitting. You can hit all 3 or 4 of these models, and we'll see. But now it's October, and you've seen over all of these hundreds of fittings that you've done. What's the drivers that are likely to perform a certain way for a player, the drivers that are likely to provide a little more spin for that player that needs it, or the vice versa, right? The lower spin drivers for the players that spin it too much.
Correct.
So it already gives you a leg up in a fitting versus 8 months ago.
And there's some specifics to this as we talk about if I'm looking for something for higher swing players versus something that might have just more of a neutral or kind of natural swing speed to it. I'm also looking at trends that I've seen in terms of forgiveness. Mm-hmm. If I go back to the G400 by Ping, and this is pretty well known, at least amongst us and in the business, the G400 was a really transformative driver for Ping. But I know that the G440 that's on the market today is everything and more.
Right.
Yes, you might have had to wait a few years in between that. I'd say the same thing without question of a Callaway, of a Titleist, of a TaylorMade, of a Cobra, of a Mizuno, of a Srixon. Like I can look at any one of these companies and I can guarantee you that 5 years ago, whatever piece of equipment they had, that the current piece of equipment is better.
Yep.
But better how is what we have to define. And that's one of the things that we find in our Fitter's Choice is like, how is this better? Is it lower spin? Is this more fade bias? Is this more draw bias? Is this like there are drivers that say 9 degree. They can all have 9 degrees on them, but some launch higher and spin more. Some launch lower and spin less. Like those are the types of kind of patterns that we're looking for with it, and that goes across the board. This year, I would say, was kind of the year of the low torque putter.
Yeah, it probably
Huge
was.
explosion.
Yep. And so you're seeing, and like for example, if I'm going to come in for a putter fitting, there's a much higher chance now that you would start with that or recommend that maybe to a player versus at the beginning of the year. And we saw how this trend really picked up. There's more models from the manufacturers, but also golfers seem to be accepting it and liking it in the fittings a lot more.
Yeah, and there are reasons, right? So physics is a great science because the thing about it is like you don't get to defy gravity. And so when we start talking about like these low torque or zero torque putters, is I as a fitter now had to study. I had to learn. I've gone to the experts in the business, the guys that are the engineers from it. We've talked with them. We've listened to them. We've read their reports on it. I'm not talking about us just saying, hey, this is a great putter. Just go try it. There's a science behind it. And there are reasons why I now would put somebody in a putter versus I would not before.
Right.
And that's where, again, we now know a lot more about the pieces of equipment that we're working with. And that's another thing. It's just another year, another season of experience.
So the benefit of more knowledge is essentially, is the main difference there. So, so Tyler, we're talking to Tyler Fitzel, Master Club Fitter, Second Swing. You brought up Fitter's Choice. And so for those that follow our content, follow our YouTube channel, at the early stages of 2025, we did some Fitter's Choice initial awards based on the new products.
Yes.
It is now towards the end of 2025. And we're going to evolve that Fitter's Choice a little bit more. So kind of, can you just tell me a little bit about the project you're kind of working on here with Fitter's Choice and what that's going to look like for kind of almost, grading 2025 products here based on fitter feedback?
One of the things we want to do is we want to be able to kind of get a collection of information from the people in the hitting bays, right? Our fitters are working with these products on an hour-by-hour basis. And what we want to do is start to identify some of the trends that we see, the patterns that exist, so that if you're coming into me and saying, hey, I am really looking to reduce some launch on this, or I really need to try to straighten things out, and this goes across the board, we start talking about combinations of things. It's not just the shaft, it's the head. We start talking about, well, I've got these pairings of things. And so we want to get more detailed with it. There are far too many choices out there for us to just go, all right, let's just try everything.
Right.
The real thing is there are so many great options. And what we're going to do is going to go back to every single one of our fitters and get more detailed information about the trends that they see. Then what we're going to do is we're going to use that and go forward with it and get our fitters on top of 2026 training. And that is, as we do a lot of our upfront training and we start learning about our products, is we're going to be going right back into the hitting bay with our fitters and finding out more about these clubs. We have fitters of every skill level.
Yeah, we do.
I would say that I would have to put it at 99%, if not 100% of our fitters are golfers, pure and simple. It's like we have very few people that are working on trying to get you the best club in your hand that aren't out there playing with you too. And that included is, hey, what works for them?
Yeah.
What do we see for them? So we've got obviously professionals. We talk about guys like Kevin Kraft. I can go through the list because we have some elite people that are qualifying for USGA events. We're talking about, Kevin's qualified for different senior opens and won some state opens. And we have this broad spectrum. So we want to get back into the hitting bay, and we want to get ahead of that and start testing that material as well. Yeah. And get ahead of it and just say, listen, hey, right away, man, this is spinning way less than last year's version.
Right. Yeah. So it's a combination of reevaluating this year's stuff and kind of getting the feedback from all the fitters, very nuanced feedback on what was the lowest spinning driver of the year?
Correct.
And where was it low spinning based on heel contact? Was it more forgiving? But then also looking ahead to 2026 and that process of when there's new stuff out, which there inevitably will be come January, there's going to be all these new golf, the new drivers and irons and woods. And so getting that feedback and the the experience of testing all that stuff as soon as possible as well, so that again you guys are well equipped come springtime for those club fittings.
Yeah, I know that as a group we send a lot of our fitters down to the PGA show, and that's in January. And what we do is we spend a lot of time actually meeting with the engineers, with the companies. We see all the work that you and your content crew do in videotaping that and showing us kind of the what's to come. It's a huge resource, but it is very important that we start looking at what's coming as well, so that we can get you the best product in your hand.
Yep.
And maybe that's the new one that's coming out. I know in my fitting bay, I've said, hey, listen, I don't think we're going to do anything with irons right now, but we're going to do it next year.
Right.
So let's do that next year. So we're going to have more choices. We still have choices that we've already got. Well, inevitably, there'll be some new shaft. There'll be some new head. There'll be some new technology.
Right.
So.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's always evolving, isn't it? The equipment landscape in golf, there's always something new that seems to change how the fitting process goes a little bit. There's some new technology. There's new adjustments on a hosel. I mean, it never seems to end. But nonetheless, that's why the fitters are never done training or learning new things, because the process is always changing. So, so it'll be great. We're looking forward to Fitter's Choice at the end of this year, and then, of course, early next year as well. So, Tyler, thank you for your time today. This was fantastic, learning a ton about the fitting process here, fall of 2025.
Awesome.
So that was Tyler Fitzel. We talked a lot, just some fitting nuances there, and kind of a different perspective maybe to, fittings this time of year. Because I think the average golfer, again, they think club fitting, they think beginning of the year, I need to get my clubs dialed in, and then it can be kind of almost forgotten when there's certainly benefits to even looking back at the year, or maybe looking back to see how your swing has changed, all those different kind of different angles to look at it from.
Yeah, and it makes sense why, at the end of the season, why there's so much value there, just because of how much you've played, or like you said, you can look back at what worked, what didn't, or maybe it's like I'm swinging, my swing, I've been playing for 4 or 5 months now, I'm playing the best golf of the year. Now's a great time to get some equipment that optimizes that.
Especially if you're a player that your handicap is getting lower and lower, right? I mean, if you were at the beginning of last year, you're a 10 handicap, and now you're down to 4. You've made a dramatic improvement.
That would be very impressive.
Yeah, but it happens, right? I mean, players can, make some significant improvements, and it's like you were a different player now than you were even 6 months ago or even a year ago. So looking at that, there's certainly some benefits to that.
Yeah, but appreciate Tyler for coming on as always. We'll have much more with him kind of throughout the fall here, so stay tuned for that. But what else do we have coming up on YouTube?
Yeah, YouTube we're rolling along. We have some fun, club comparisons. We actually today, as we're recording this on Tuesday, we published a fun one looking at the best value irons that are available in our used inventory. So we're looking at T100s from 2021, 200S, and JPX 923 Tour. Fun one because our fitters have kind of labeled those 3 as really good values based on our used selection and what people are seeing in the used fittings. So that's a really good one. But then we've also got the Get Fit Like a Pro, the next part coming along here very soon on Monday with Coy Parrish, really fun one. He's having a heck of a football season, but also he can play golf, and we looked at that as well. So a lot of fun stuff on the YouTube channel. Yeah,
and on Thursdays live at lunch, talking about the Ryder Cup, we're going to test out the TaylorMade P7Ws head-to-head against Rory's TaylorMade Roars prototypes. Whether you want to do branded as Scotty Scheffler's irons or Rory McIlroy's, or maybe do Team Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah, it's perfect timing because we got the Roars Proto irons in, and then we also kind of a crazy timing situation here where then we got a set of the P7TWs traded in with the Tour Issue X100 Dynamic Gold shafts that Scotty plays. So it's not perfectly built to his specs like the Rory Proto irons are to Rory's, but it's going to be pretty darn close.
Pretty darn close. Yeah, really looking forward to that. So once again, that's Thursday at 1. On the second swing side, our Ryder Cup contest wrapped up. Winners should be announced by the time of this publication. So head to secondswing.com to see if you were one of our 28 lucky winners. And then, Drew mentioned, Titleist T100, T100S, JPX 9232. Always check out our best value sections. You get, some older clubs that are in fantastic shape, that have performed very well since they kind of were released. And now being a few years older, they're going for a much better price. So make sure you check those out as well.
Yeah. Last thing, subscribe. Subscribe wherever you are. If you're listening on a podcast platform, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed and you're staying tuned when we've got new episodes dropping every week. So thank you for watching and listening. We'll see you next week.